everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it.
Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're looking at Isaiah chapter 35 and 36, and it's sort of a blend of follow-up from yesterday, kind of. I mean, obviously we're just reading these chapter by chapter, so obviously they follow up. But we talked a little bit about what the reign of Messiah will be like, and chapter 35 has a lot to say about that. And then we'll also talk about the siege of Judah by the Assyrians, which was talked about yesterday, specifically when Isaiah was addressing complacent women. That's what the text says. That's not what Ryan says. That basically were unaware of the fact that this incredible siege and war was coming, and they were enjoying this relative peace that was kind of misleading. And so we're going to deal with the siege today, and we're also going to deal with the ultimate reign of the eternal king as well.
So it's kind of weird for me because it's kind of flip-flopped of what you just said. We hear more about that eternal reign in chapter 35. It's pretty short and sweet. But what caught my attention more today was we're just like jumping right back into more of the narrative stories. And I think a lot of what today's stories, I think, is more about is like those archaeological pieces that you were kind of bringing up earlier, and like evidences of the Assyrian king's account of this compared to the Bible, and how many similarities, if not just like complete mirrors of each other, they are. So this is just another faith-affirming story for me. There's a little bit of strange deception of certain characters that come up against God and what Hezekiah is telling the people. So that was an interesting piece for me as well. So those archaeological pieces that we were talking about, as well as kind of this like run-in between the people of Jerusalem and this guy. Oh, what's his name? It's not his name, but it's his title.
The Rabshakeh.
Yes, he's like this.
That is a title, not a name.
He's
an
a
office.
high-ranking military officer of the Assyrians. So those are the two things that stuck out to me specifically. Do you want to talk about the archaeological
So this is pretty cool. Like, so far as I've been reading, I know Isaiah is kind of known as the Messiah book. At least in my mind, it's kind of a Messiah book. And it has proven to be so as we read through it. Another thing that is sticking out to me is there is an incredible amount of archaeological support, like actual historical things that have been dug out of the ground that show that Isaiah is a reliable text, and what Isaiah is preaching and teaching does come true. So we talked about Isaiah 22. Isaiah 22 talks about Hezekiah's tunnel. You can go visit Hezekiah's tunnel today.
So cool.
It also talks about this prideful
Assyrians?
prideful steward of the king, Shebna, and actually Shebna shows up in this text, that built like a really fancy tomb for himself.
Oh, okay.
They have discovered that tomb. It does exist. You can go visit it today. Today is another one of those readings where there is actual historical evidence for what's being said here, and it's kind of a bridge between today and tomorrow. So chapter 36 and chapter 37 is a lot about the Assyrians attacking Judah. And the Assyrians have already carried off Israel into exile. That happened in 722. And now the Assyrians are attacking Judah, and they intend to lay siege to Jerusalem. And that's happening in 701. And so what happens in the story in chapter 36 is that this royal official shows up and is like, hey, we're going to destroy you. Like, literally no God has stood before us. There's some pretty cool stuff going on there. We should talk about that too.
That was kind of like that weird like deception, but not really trying to be deceptive. Like the people know that they're supposed to stand their ground regardless of what the stranger danger says. But the guy that's like the stranger danger, he's speaking out of what he believes is true.
Yeah.
Like he's not trying to deceive them, but it's also like this double-edged thing. It's really strange.
You guys should really go read Isaiah 36. It's very interesting. If you don't want to read it, you can stick around for the actual reading that's on the podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, you got to go over and follow the podcast. The link is in the description. Chapter 36 is so interesting.
Well, yeah, it's like one of those stories, like, you know, like when you read biographies or when you think back on your own life, there are certain parts that like stick out as like, whoa, do you remember that really weird time when this happened and it was like totally a work of God?
Yeah.
Like this feels like one of those stories
It
that
totally
like,
is.
oh my word, do you remember when that happened? That was crazy. That's what this specific story reminds me of, because it kind of just like plops in there and it's like, oh, wow, that's nuts.
What's even crazier is today we're only reading half the story. You got to stick around for tomorrow to hear the full story. But basically, what happens is this royal official comes into Judah, and they send this delegation with an army to Hezekiah's officials, and the Rabshakeh is what he's called. Basically says like, hey, we're gonna destroy you.
Mm-hmm.
Like no gods have been able to defend any city that we've overcome. And so I know you think your gods are going to defend you. They're not going to.
Well,
And he says, your king has offended your God by tearing down his high places and his like places of worship.
it's because there's an assumption that like God is served among all these other
Religions.
like religions and other gods and other altars and all these other things. So when he takes down these high places, he's like, wow, why would you do that to your own God?
Yes. So it's really funny. The Assyrians are very aware of what's going on here. They are aware of what is happening in Israel and Judah. They understand the culture. They understand the worship. The one detail that they miss is that they think the God of Israel and Judah is Baal and Ashtoreth.
Yeah.
And so they say, like, what's up with this king that you're trusting in that is offending your gods on purpose?
Mm-hmm.
But Hezekiah, like us reading it from the Christian perspective, the Jewish perspective, we know that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is not Baal and Ashtoreth.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a good thing when Hezekiah destroys the high places and the altars. And so you can see that misunderstanding here. You can also see in chapter 36, verse 10, the Rabshakeh, so this is the Assyrian, the bad guy, I guess, sort of. He says, the Lord said to me, go up against this land and destroy it. So you have this Rabshakeh, this Assyrian official, saying, hey, we consulted God, and God said we're supposed to come against you.
I see this kind of in two ways, though, because he's
seen...
also coming at them and saying, hey, we're going to destroy you because it's happened all the other times. What do you think your God's going to do differently than all the other ones? But I feel like this is like a layer on top of that of like pure bluffing. Like, God told me to come and destroy.
Yeah.
Now, he may have been hearing from someone evil or whatever, but I think that is interesting as well. But something that I did want to mention that we haven't yet is that when he was supposed to come, they asked him to speak in
Aramaic.
Yeah. And not Hebrew, so that the people, like, because they would understand it, but they wouldn't totally understand like the full seriousness of it. But he just like belts it out in Hebrew anyway. So like the people are actually hearing the full straight up message. So I think that's a huge act of faith on them too, because they're like, holy crap, what did he just say? We're just supposed to go along with it and pretend like, okay, that's great.
Yep.
So like they're definitely shaking in their boots a little bit because of the words of this guy.
There's a couple of views on what this guy is talking about when he says the Lord told him to do this. The first is that he's just talking about his Assyrian gods. The second is that the Rabshakeh is familiar with Isaiah, which is very possible, and knows that Isaiah has been telling the people that judgment is coming and destruction is coming.
So he's just playing the situation really well.
It's very possible that he actually believes he is fulfilling what Isaiah has said will happen. The problem is Isaiah has not said that it will happen like in this moment. They're a little bit too early. The final thing that is possible is that they have all been consulting their gods, and God in his sovereignty has told the Assyrians, go down there and judge my people that belong to me. And so there's a couple different ways to look at this. I think they're all pretty interesting. You can take from that what you want. Now back to the archaeology piece. This goes, we'll talk about this today and we'll talk about this tomorrow, but there is this thing called Sennacherib's prism. It was discovered in 1830. There's actually 3 of them in existence, and they were most likely created in 1698, I believe. So this is a couple years after this siege. And Sennacherib's prism recounts almost exactly what you can read here in Isaiah 36 and Isaiah 37. So this is an actual piece of Assyrian history that has been discovered. It was discovered in Nineveh, which today in modern history is Mosul in northern Iraq. But it was discovered in 1830. It's currently in the British Museum, and it describes in Assyrian what we can read here in English in our translated Bible. And it's just one more instance of actual history showing up, and we can confirm by multiple sources. The Bible is a reliable source. People just like to attack it because they don't want to believe what it says. But also Sennacherib's prism is a reliable source. And tomorrow we can talk about kind of the different narratives that show up. Hezekiah is going to explain things one way, Isaiah is going to explain things one way, and then Sennacherib on his prism is going to explain things a different way. But this is confirmed by archaeology and history that this is a real event that actually happened. And tomorrow we get to see how this is all going to play out.
So I guess a cool your part for today is just like we were talking about, this story is one of those like stories that you can kind of like think back to, like, whoa, that's really crazy how God worked through that situation. Now, we haven't totally seen this work out yet, but I'm sure that there is something in your life that just like doesn't totally make sense for you. But it's one of those stories that like if you like maybe even write it down, or you have written it down, or if you haven't, you will, because like I don't want to forget that one. I don't want to forget how God showed up in like crazy ways or worked this out in ways that I can't explain. But think about those ways and just thank the Lord for what he has done and how he's come through for you as you're reflecting on this really interesting intervention through Isaiah in the story of Hezekiah. So we will see you guys back tomorrow, and we will continue on in the story of Hezekiah.
The story's only half over. You got to come back tomorrow. We'll see you then. Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.